Aloha mai kako. My name is leading our 10 campus system and our flagship University of Hawaiʻi at Manoa. We serve these islands, which are the ancestral home of the Kanaka Maoli, or Native Hawaiian people. My own ancestry involves centuries of wandering, but I am now privileged to make my home in lush Waiomau within Palolo Valley, in the Ahupua'a of Waikiki, within the Moku of Kona on the island of Oahu. I'm personally grateful to this place and her people, both of which have embraced me for over 4 decades. Over 125 years ago, Queen Liliuokalani yielded the Hawaiian Kingdom and these territories under duress and protest to the United States to avoid the bloodshed of her people. And it was nearly 30 years ago that the US government formally apologized for this act, which it has acknowledged as an illegal overthrow. As the only public institution of higher education in Hawaii, the University of Hawaii is strategically clear in our commitment to become a model Indigenous serving institution, committed to the sustainability of Hawaii's people, islands, language, culture, and knowledge. This strategic imperative is named Hawaii Papaʻokeʻau, or the Hawaii Foundation of Enlightened Knowledge. So today I welcome you all, and I offer up an invitation to join us in celebrating the University of Hawaii's ongoing contributions to the advancement of Indigenous Hawaiian knowledge. Mahalo.
Aloha mai kako. I am Mainette Kapiahiokalani Padikinani Benham, Chancellor of the University of Hawaii West Oahu and co-chair of Hawaii Papaʻokeʻau, with Chancellor of Maui College, Dr. Louis Hokoana. Hawaii Papaʻokeʻau was established in January 2012 and consists of representatives from all 10 campuses. The purpose of this presidentially appointed committee is to set goals and objectives to address the higher education needs of Native Hawaiians through 3 pathways: leadership development, community engagement, and Hawaiian language and cultural parity. At our first meeting this school year, our discussions focused on how our Native Hawaiian students, faculty, and staff, and their families were managing this challenging time. Committee members shared that folks on their campus were feeling isolated, disconnected, and depressed due to the psychosocial, emotional, and economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we asked, what could Hawaii Papaʻokeʻau do? And after some discussion led by Tapori Tangaro, representative from Hawaii Community College, we decided that we wanted to address Indigenous well-being through the nourishment that can be found in the abundant talent and knowledge across our campus communities. Hence, the birth of the inaugural Hawaii Papaʻokeʻau series, He Ukana Aloha Kā Kīlauea. Mahalo for joining us today, and we hope to see you and your family and friends every month through June of 2021 as we lovingly share this makana with you. E nā nea kākou I ka ike kupuna I ho'owili ai mai ki kilo mai. Enjoy and be enriched by the wisdom passed down from our kupuna through so many generations to us today. Aloha.
No tihi la we ate aloha la hanali oka ke le tamoana la hana holo ma mua holo ma ho pela hana taupono kari hui tamata hani la hana haeo mai kila ue ala hana kaua he ahe ia I daili daila hana hakinua kaua I te daila hana no mea e kaui la malaha halona hana maho mai Taihi Vila Hana no Kamehameha Elima.
Erina manoa I kale hua aloha, aloha ua tuahine. Mai lua hine a iwa hiki, kia I ke kaha ukani. Kanino na leo, e o kama aina aloha e. Manoa e. Aloha mai ka ko e nā hoa maka maka mai ka la hiki a ka la kau. Peli na nui me ke aloha. My name is Kaivipuni Kauikavekiu, Puni he Light, and it is my pleasure and honor to welcome you to this month's series of He Ukana Aloha Kā Kīlauea, as just explained in that wonderful little video. So mahalo to all of you for being here today. I am going to be your facilitator for this month, and so I should share a little bit about myself to explain my kuleana in this particular situation. I was hired in 2017 as UH Manoa's inaugural Native Hawaiian Affairs Program Officer, and my kuleana in that job is to help our campus to bring 30 years of recommendations from the Native Hawaiian reports, dating all the way back to the 1986 Ka'u report, to bring those recommendations to life on our campus in partnership with our students, our staff, and our faculty across the campus. So it's my honor to be in that role. Also in that role, I am the University of Hawaiʻi at Manoa representative to Hawaii Papo'okeao at the moment. And I have held that kuleana for a couple of years now. Before me, Dean Moku'au, and before that, Dean Mainette Benham, when she was here before she became Chancellor of West Oahu. So I am here to facilitate, as Chancellor Mainette Benham described in the video, a little bit from our campus to share with all of you. The idea is that the sharing that we do from each campus is engaging and shares joy and shares some type of little, bit of well-being and aloha that we can share with you and that you can carry on in your day, in your life, especially right now in these often challenging times. I find myself taking a deep breath often throughout the day. I'm sure you do too, and I invite you to. And so for the next hour, I hope you're eating lunch right now. If you can sit back, relax, take a breath, and as you nourish your body, that this can be nourishing for your soul, for your na'au, and for your kino as well. As I mentioned, we have 2 presentations this month. Every campus is doing 2 presentations. If you haven't seen the ones that already were aired in September and October, don't worry. They are recorded and they will be on online at the Hawaii Papo'okeao website, and we'll drop the Hawaii Papo'okeao link into, oh, and there it is right there. Like I said, so I'm going to introduce our speakers right in a minute, but before that, our next presentation in a couple of weeks on November 25th, you can see it in the chat, will be with the Malama Project, same time, same place. The Malama Project really supports students here at Manoa's campus in substance abuse recovery. Now, I know that might not sound uplifting or going to bring a bunch of joy to your life, but I think it really will. I think their approaches are amazing. They're beautiful. They're engaging. They're grounded in Ike Hawaii. And I don't know about you, but in our family, we have folks in our family and our circle of friends who are in long-term recovery. And so knowing how to best malama them brings me joy. And to do it from a Hawaiian-centered place, allows me to be a better ohana and friend to them. So I'm really looking forward to that. I promise it'll be uplifting and full of tools, right? Which is what we need. How do we traverse this path that we are on as human beings, as people living in Hawaii? How can we do that together? And so today and also our next webinar series, I believe we'll do that, as well as all the series, all the shows in the series that will be provided via Hawaii Papo'okeao on the 10 campuses. So to return to our topic for today and our speaker for today, I have the privilege of introducing the very famous and special Professor Lilikala Kame'elehiwa, senior professor at Kamakakuakalani Center for Hawaiian Studies, and also the chair, and she's going to talk a little bit more about this, the branch chair, I should say, for comparative Polynesian studies. And I'll let her, as the expert, talk about that a little bit. But we're really lucky to have her today. She teaches a full load. She has lots of students and papers and exams to correct. And yet when I reached out to our campus to ask folks who would volunteer, she was the first to answer. And I think that really speaks to her ongoing aloha for our campus and our communities, which I'm really grateful for. I will say, and some of you know this, but I will say she's also my mom. And, you know, so she is kumu lilikala to me, but she is also mom to me. I will probably use those two words interchangeably today. But, you know, in being my mom, she is the largest source of life and knowledge for me. And so she's kumu, but mom. And so those words for me mean the same thing. But I want to honor you, Mom, as kumu, not only to me and to our ohana, but to so many people, countless over the last, how old am I? 30 plus years. I'm older than 30. But, you know, really grateful that you still carve out time even today to do this. So without further ado, everyone, please help me welcome Professor Lilikala Kame'elehiwa. Thank you, Mom, for being here today.
Hallelujah. This is going to be good fun. And that's
Absolutely.
the thing, we want to have fun.
Absolutely,
And
I agree.
anytime you guys want to ask questions, you folks who are in the audience, well, please do just put it in the chat and we'll get to them. Okay.
Okay. So I have, yes, please do so. We have someone that's monitoring the Q&A. So if you could go ahead and actually put your messages into the Q&A, that will be where we will be looking. It's a little button down on the bottom of your Zoom screen if you're not too familiar with Zoom yet. Okay, so what we're gonna do today, gang, for the next 45 minutes or so is I'm gonna ask my mom a few questions about the Polynesian Ancestral webinar series. And then she's gonna show a short presentation with all of you, and then we're gonna have some time for Q&A. That's how we're gonna roll today. So Mom, to begin with, can you share with everyone a little bit about what the Polynesian Ancestral Knowledge webinar series is all about? If you can kind of summarize the point of it.
The point is to have fun. What's really fun for me and what I think is important for us during this pandemic is for each of us to find out what gives us joy and do that every day. It's a stressful time, don't want to have stress, right? So I tell it to my students, I tell it to my friends, and I got to be the branch chair for comparative Polynesian studies last year, actually. So I was gearing up for all kind of bring people in to give seminars. We're going to have, you know, every other month we're going to have people fly in and do these things, and then COVID hit. So we had one in January where we brought in Dr. Margaret Mutu and Senator Ari Ihau from Tahiti. She's from, Margaret Mutu is from Aotearoa and he's from Tahiti. And they talked about decolonization. They talked about what they're doing in their countries about getting the country back. And just like Hawaiians, you know, they want the country back. And they have colonizers that are different from ours. So, okay. And that was really interesting, wonderful. I had a good time. The next time I was going to bring in a new set of people to talk about Atua, ancestors, stars, and temples in Hawaii and Polynesia. I really love this stuff. This is my favorite, really. I like that much more than politics. So over my lifespan, I know I've done a lot of political things, but now I'm a tutu and I don't have to do those things anymore. I leave it to the maku, I leave it to the younger ones. So what I like to do is ancestral knowledge stuff. And I've been fascinated all my life, but especially since 1995, when I got to go down to Tahiti, to Raiatea, and all the canoes came there, and I realized how close our languages were and how close our traditions and our place names, you know, there's a Waianae Mo'orea, for instance. I mean, really, you know? So I started to think, wow, we don't know anything about this up here. And I started to do more research. So what I do every week now, at 7 o'clock at night, I put on a webinar and I invite one of these folks to come in because we've had 21 20, no, sorry, 20, we've had 20 webinars so far since June. And all of them are like incredibly intelligent. And I learn something new every single time I watch. So I just go, wow, wow, wow. So I'm happy. And that means on Wednesdays, I'm really happy because I know that I will learn something fabulous in the evening. For instance, did you know that the Tahitians have a star chant that has Moana or oceans in the sky? And that's how they remember how to get from one place to another. Wow, really? I never knew that. And then we had with the Maori, Dr. Matabua, for instance, he told us about, we're looking at stars right now for the land ceremonies. And he told us that there's a canoe in the sky. It's led by the Makali'i, the Pleiades. It includes Orion. It has a net attached to it. And everyone who passes away in the year, in the Polynesian year, will be put into that net. And at the end of the year, they're released up into the sky to become stars. So we see them forever. I mean, really cool and ancient. Stuff that it's not even published. So now we're doing it, recording it, and it's available forever for people to see and use in their classes, and it's all free. So I'm having a very good time. I have enough stuff to go for a whole year, by the way, every week. Is that what you wanted to know about?
Really helpful, and thank you. And one thing you said earlier, just let everybody know, you said a show every night. She means a show every Wednesday night, including tonight, which she will talk a little bit more about in a second. I want to lean back into joy. Joy is a concept that we talked a lot about in our house over the years as we raise our children and trying to figure out how do we raise children with joy as parents, but also kids having joy in their lives. But I think it's also important listening to someone like Nili Kalaa Kume'elehiwa talk about joy. It's like, what? Oh, so much hard work over the years. They're talking about joy. So I'm interested. You say that this webinar series brings you joy. Mm-hmm. I'm interested if you can talk a little bit about what in particular is it for you, right? And then what are you hoping your participants, your audience gets out of it? What are you hoping that they find joy in, or that maybe that you've had people share with you about that they are finding fun? If you could just talk a little bit about that. I am personally interested, but I think others will be too.
Well, I want to say that the idea of having joy in education really came from Punihe, from Kaidi Punilai, because she wanted to start a school called Halelea that would be a place of joy where kids would have joy every day when they came. So we did homeschooling for 3 years, and that was it was really fun. And I still do that with my mo'opuna on Sundays. We have a little class, sometimes on Zoom, sometimes face-to-face, whichever. And for 2 hours, and 2 hours goes by like that. And they make beautiful drawings and they're happy. They don't have to come there. Absolutely not. And sometimes we want to go to the beach, we do that instead. But when they're there, they're really happy. And so I thought, wow, this is working. This is Punihi's idea is working. So if the kids can have joy, how about the teachers? Can we have joy too? Right? So then I started to really shift and look at what do I like to do? And I love teaching almost more than anything. I think only my grandchildren are more exciting to me than teaching. And my children, but my grandchildren. And I really love being a tutu. It's sort of very freeing. But what I like most about teaching is that I get to do research and share it with folks who want to be there. I mean, nobody has to take my class. So if they're in the class, and I got 70 students right now. So they're in the class, they really want to learn some of this stuff. And that makes me happy that I'm doing something others are engaged to. But now with the webinar, the weekly webinars, every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock, we have people coming in from all over the world, from French Polynesia, from France, from all across America, from New York, from Vegas, etc., from Aotearoa, from Rapa Nui. And so now there's a different conversation going on. And when they put questions into the chat, that's what I said, chat, really for you folks, it's Q&A. Okay, got it. I'm still learning all the bells and whistles for doing webinar, but the discussion we have is so amazing with them, not with me. I mean, I'm just, helping the thing roll on. There are so many brilliant people in Polynesia who know so much about our ancestors because face it, we're all cousins. So, and we know this in Hawaii, but usually we're like, in Hawaii, Hawaiians are kind of like the frog under the coconut shell. They think the coconut shell is the whole world. We think only Hawaii is the whole world. And it's true. Everybody in Hawaii thinks this is the only world. What else is going on? We don't really care because it's our world. And I like making the connections because I love the idea of being able to voyage from Hawaii to Tahiti in 2 weeks' time. And why would anybody stop doing it when it's so much fun? So we're voyaging in the mind. We're doing on a webinar. The webinar is being recorded forever. Their beautiful thoughts. Puakana Hele chanting for us and explaining the universe for us. Explaining Mauna Kea. Wow, that was a real highlight. So makes me happy. That's all. It just makes me happy. I think it might not make everyone happy, even though I've got a following. They like to come on every week and they really like that. We like that. It's very good. But everyone needs to find their own joy. What is it that each person really, really likes to do, and what's going to keep them happy all day? So that's my goal. And I tell my students, how are you folks doing today? Because we're all on Zoom and it's a little strange. And they go, oh, cool, nothing's new. I go, oh no, today's gonna be new. Today we're gonna have fun in class. So, it kind of changed the way I teach, so that I like when I'm teaching mythology or I'm teaching the 100 generations of chiefs or whatever, it's never a, this is serious stuff and you must learn that or else. It's like, oh, isn't it kind of cool? Let's do this. And so I encourage everyone to find that for themselves, really. How do you choose what gives you that joy? And it's going to be different for everyone. But I think it's one of the most wonderful things we can learn during a pandemic. And when you think about our ancestors, our Hawaiian ancestors, here in Hawaii, from 1778 when Cook arrived, when we had 1 million people, to 1893 when the American military arrived to take over the country, we went from 1 million people to 40,000. Talk about pandemics and having to deal with that all the time. And still, there was that concept of aloha. And the queen said, we must not kill anyone. She put a kapu maluhia on us, which has never been lifted since that time. Kapu maluhia. We will have peace. We will have aloha. We will appeal to people with good hearts in America to give the country back. Mm-hmm. Now we're still waiting, but we'll have some good discussions. And I think the university is one place where we can have a lot of those discussions. So even though I'm not leading that, that makes me happy too.
Thank you. I heard a lot of things in that response. So mahalo. And I heard looking at what brings children joy, right? And actually paying attention to that. Which is an interesting topic, which could be a whole other webinar. But I love that we're planting that in the minds of our viewers today. I heard you talking about what brings makua, what brings kupuna joy. How do we find, and we're talking about healthy joy here, people, by the way, right? Right. And how do we find that even, and, your example of your students, even when, we're online every day, we don't have the same things we used to have in person, but how can you find something to be happy about? How can you find something that comes from inside of you, inside of ourselves, that can keep us positive and finding, something to be joyful and grateful about every day, right? I know you always say, every day that sun rises, the possibilities that Kaneholani, the sun, brings, right? And so how do we look at how do we spin, how do we frame perhaps differently, which I think is really, really helpful. I don't mean spin in a negative way. I mean to look at it with a new lens. I love this idea of voyaging in the mind. I wrote it down because it kind of really stuck with me. We can't go many places right now, but we can as we connect with different people. I feel more connected sometimes than I did when I was in person, the ways we can connect across oceans and land masses. And so how do we be in conversation is also what I heard you talk about. If we're in conversation with others and we can voyage in our minds and even our hearts perhaps, and travel that way and stimulate different parts of ourselves that maybe we didn't pay attention to as much before the pandemic. So I think lots of learning there, lots of wisdom there. So thank you for sharing that. To give everybody an example, right? So you can tune in tonight, and I know you have information about tonight, but to tune in tonight, oh, thank you, everyone. You can see that in the chat here, the information about the webinar series that she holds every Wednesday. But to give us an example, I know you have a few slides. If you could maybe share with us just a teeny tiny little hors d'oeuvre, a little poo-poo of what the kind of work is that you guys do in the webinar series.
Sure. I also wanted to say that one of the things we're doing in this webinar series that's kind of different is everything is in English and French.
Mm.
So that all of French Polynesia, our cousins in Tahiti and the Australs and the Tuamotus, Marquesas, they can all come on. They don't have English, that's not a barrier. They often will write questions in French into the chat that they have. And I have a co-host, well, he's the translator, he's the official translator, Hironui Bui. And he is a fabulous translator. He can, on the split second, he can do that. So he will be the one presenting about it in French, and then I'll say, oh, en français, s'il vous plaît, and then he'll bring it into English, and we'll talk about it in English. But that conversation has gotten so much better because we're going across those two colonial languages. And someday we're going to figure out how to get Spanish in there so that the Rapa Nui people can be, coming in. And then my stream also expand to South America to our Peruvian cousins, because obviously they're our cousins, and stuff like that. So we're having a really good time, and to be able to do it in two languages, and I think Hironui is so good. But what I'm going to just show you now is only stuff that I do with my English speaking classes, and I actually taught this all to my mo'opuna, so it's really easy stuff, but it's about the sun. Now I'm Lili Kala, which is the intense heat of the sun. So of course, I want to talk about the la, right? And so that's what we're going to look at.
I'm just going to give a couple of caveats to our audience. First of all, she says it's very easy. And I don't want anyone to feel self-judgment, because it's actually not easy for me. But, I think children can apple a little bit quicker. But just so that, no self-judgment gang today, okay? But she's going to give a little, and there will be no translation. I'm not that talented. Oh, I could translate into Hawaiian, but for time's sake, we are going to just do it in one language, just so that you know. But go learn plenty languages. I think that's part of the point. So go ahead, Mom, you can go ahead and share screen. I'm gonna turn my camera off just so that there's full focus on you, and I'll make sure you get your screen shared correctly first.
Okay. Okay, I think it's coming up. We practiced this.
We did. And it looks perfect. The floor is yours.
Fabulous. Okay, so this presentation is called Hikimai Kala'e, and it's which means here comes the sun. There's a lot of songs about that, right? And the first line is Hikimai Kala'e. This is a photo that was taken by my son Na'alehu Anthony from Ka'awa Beach, and you can see the sun rising over Molokai. Isn't that amazing? So here comes the sun. Hikimai Kala'e. Here it comes the sun. And what does the sun do when it rises? It's a metaphor for the new knowledge of the day. And I'm a knowledge junkie. I love to learn new things all the time. So this is this is a favorite chant. I found this in Emerson's Unwritten Literature. It has two verses, but I'm only looking at the first verse. It's only 4 lines long. The second line is Aloha Wale Kala'i Kaune. So when the sun rises, it only has love for us as it shines down upon us. Wow. And this is a photo I took from Punalu'u Beach on Oahu of the sun rising. And then it says, Ayama Lalo o Kawaihoa, which means there at Kawaihoa. And that's this little, let's see, is this on my screen? Can you see my cursor, guys? No?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Okay, great. So there's Kawaihoa. It's a little pu'u in Ni'ihau. This is the island of Ni'ihau. And then it says, Ikalala o Kauai o Lehua. So here's, it's going to go in the middle here. This is the Lala o Kauai. See, it's right in the shadow of Waialeale. And then in Lehua, it's hard to see on this map, but there actually is a little island there that you can look at and see that's called Lehua. So this is kind of strange. We understand, in fact, here, let me show you. There's Lehua. It's a crescent-shaped rock. And I just found out this morning, I've just found this map this morning. The top part of this hill is called Kaunu Okala, Ka'unuakala, the altar of the sun on Lehua Island. So, okay, yeah, Kumo, this is all interesting, right? Okay, what does this mean? The sun rises in the east. For the first two lines, we hear the sun is rising. It's rising in the east. And then for the next two lines, we hear about how it sets here at Kawaihoa at winter solstice, here Malala Kauai at equinox, and here at Lehua for the winter solstice, excuse me, summer solstice. So this one down below is winter, then equinox, then summer. So the sun is, in our minds, the sun is moving across the horizon. It rises in the east and it sets in the west. And so in this, we learn about where it's setting for 6 months of the year. In fact, it's going to come back down to Kawaihoa at the end of the year. So that's something that we talk about a lot in our class, in our webinar. I like to chant it for you so you can hear what a lot of my students know this. And if any of you are watching, please chant along with me. It goes like this. Hiki mai e kala e aloha vale kala e kaune aia mahalalo ka waihohua I ka lalo kauai ole huai. Now, you should know that these kinds of chants for the sun are multitudinous in Hawaiian. There's actually hundreds and hundreds of these chants. So the sun's very important to the Hawaiian people. And this particular island called Lehua, which you see at the end of this chant, that island is, here we are. Let's show our island again. This island is named for where the sun sets because the Lehua blossom looks like the sun rising and setting in our way of thinking. And now that I'm doing a Polynesia-wide webinar, I start with greeting everyone from the rising of the sun at Mauna Keakea in Rapa Nui to the setting of the sun in the Sea of Lehua in Aotearoa. The place names that we have for these important events, like solstices and equinoxes, are actually found throughout Polynesia. And I find that pretty exciting too. Now, one of the things we look at is the work that others have done. And this is a slide by Kalei Nu'uhiwa. This is Hapaiali'i temple at Kona. It's Kona, Hawaii Island. And I'll just read this. Hawaiians built several sites to observe and track the solar movement. These structures are called heiau. Hei means to capture. Au means time. A heiau was a calendar tool for Hawaiians. Hapaiali'i is the name of this heiau, and its southern corner marks the Alapola Hiva a Kanaloa. So this is Kanaloa's rock right there, right? The center marks Pigua Wakea, that's Wakea's rock. And the northern one marks the Alapola Hiva a Kane, that's Kane's rock. So there are three akua that we hear about. They're really important in Tahiti and in Hawaii. Yeah. So the sun will set on top of these rocks like that for winter solstice, there for equinox, and there for summer solstice. Right, here's our names. Winter solstice is Alapola Hiva Kanaloa, equinox, Alapiko Wakea, summer solstice, Alapola Hiva Kane. Okay, Kanaloa, Wakea, Kane. That's interesting. Yeah, that's where they go. Every single year, the sun goes there. The sun matches up with where those stars are. Might be a different lunar month, but it's every single year. So those three lines for winter solstice, equinox, summer solstice are what we have in our chant. See? Kawaihoa, Kauai, Lehua. So there's lots of chants like that that will be specific to where people are living. They're living on Ni'ihau. That's what they're going to talk about. This is where the sun is setting for winter solstice, equinox, summer solstice. And I don't know, I just have so much fun with this. These are all Kalei Nu'uhiwa's slides, by the way. Who she's now Dr. Kalei Nu'uhiwa. She just got her PhD at Waikato University. And I look forward to the day when we in Hawaii Nui Akea can have our own PhD program, so brilliant Hawaiians don't have to move to another country to get a PhD. They can do it here at home with us. Yes. Okay. All right. So we've seen this before. Very good. We know where we're going. These are the 3 lines. These 3 lines are also on the map. Okay. So here's a map of Polynesia. And you will see at the bottom line here is Alopolohiwa Kanaloa. That is the Tropic of Capricorn. Alopiko Owake is the name for the equator. And Alopolohiwa Akane is the name for the Tropic of Cancer. So throughout this whole area, these names are known, these lines are known. Everyone understands in Polynesia that the sun will move along from Tropic of Capricorn in the winter. It rises and it's going to set the same place on the other side of the west, rising in the east and east and east. So it's here in December 21, and then it's here in March 21, and then it's there in June 21, and then it comes back down to September 21, all the way down to December 21. Yeah, and we have certain stars that mark that, which is, I'm crazy about stars. So here we are. Here's the stars that mark this. The first star in the belt of Orion, actually, and this star line is called Wakea, our sky father, the ancestor of the Hawaiian nation, the Hawaiian people, Hawaiian race. So he's our ancestor. And here in that first star actually marks 0 degrees on a map, 0 degrees on the Earth, the equator, and it comes down every day and night. When it's in the night sky, it'll come down. When it's in the day sky, you won't see it, but it's still coming down. In the same place, it comes down to that first, let's see, where's my cursor? That middle one, here we go, right there. And then when the sun sets there, the sun is actually setting on the first star in the belt of Orion. So you can build temples using that knowledge, actually. We won't go into that today. That's another lecture. Down south in Tahiti, in Raiatea, where they have a real affinity for Kanaloa, this star line, which we call the fishhook of Maui, or Manaya Kalani, and the star Lehuakona, which is this one right here, is actually, and declination is misspelled, is minus 24 degrees south. So Wakea is 0. Lehuakona in Scorpio is minus 24. And what's plus 24 is Makali'i, the Pleiades. So tonight, Kalenu Ohiwa is going to talk about how we can measure the new year and recalibrate our lunar calendars using the rising of the Pleiades or Makali'i once a year, looking east to the eastern horizon. When the sun goes down, we see Makali'i rising. That's going to be the beginning of our new year. Maoris do it when the sun is rising, right before the sunrise. They look east and they do it that way. So we were kind of a little bit different. We're doing it at nighttime. They're doing in the morning. So I wanted to tell you that all of this is not very strange. We can watch this ourselves. You can go to look west on your back porch maybe, or maybe it's your front porch, but you're gonna look west as the sun is setting. And if you can do this at equinox, what you can do is you stand with your nose directly to Wakea. Can you guys see me? So your nose is to Wakea. Then you put out your arms and your right hand, which we call akau in Hawaiian, actually is north, and it means north as well as right. And the left hand, hema, which means left, also means south. We know exactly where 0 north, where 0 west, that east and west degree is from our nose. We know the cross makes north and south because our body now becomes the compass. And when we want to find out or predict where winter solstice and winter solstice will be, we put our arms together. Can you see me there? Yeah, it's kind of hard to listen. You turn over your hands, and Kalenu Uhiwa says, when you measure, you can measure where your thumbs are, that far away from your nose, and that's what will be Lehuakona for winter solstice, and that's where the sun will set at Makali'i for summer solstice. Okay, so wow, that means ancestors knew a lot about astronomy, right? And we can look at what else they knew. So we've been doing this whole thing with stars, and we've had Tahitians talking about stars. Oh, I tell you, they've been fabulous. We've had Maoris talking about stars. Next, we're going to have, well, Kalei's going to talk about particular star ceremony. See, this is stars not for navigating. These are stars for what you do in the land. How do you understand the land? How do you understand weather? So you might say, wow, so Kuma, why do we care if these are in the sky and these uprights? Because the kahuna and the ali'i, the leaders of our people, wanted to tell us when we were going to have certain kind of weather that's connected to the winter solstice. What happens to weather at equinox? What's going to happen to weather at the summer solstice? How does that weather change, and how can we be cognizant of that? And how can the folks who are studying these things tell everybody, okay, gonna have rainstorms now. Let's not plant anything now that all got washed away. Okay, now is a good time. We're gonna turn from winter going to summer. The days are gonna get longer, so it's a good time to make kapa. Okay, then summer, and it's gonna change all the year round, and they have good advice for us every time. So that's my story from Hiki Mai Kala, that 4-line chant. I want to show you also, here's what we're doing tonight with Dr. Kalei Nu'uhiva. She'll be talking about Makali'i Kuapola ceremonies for the new year. And Kuapola is a word we don't often hear. She's kind of reviving it. She's got a team that she's taught throughout all of the Hawaiian Islands to go and look what the stars look like from their island when it's Makali'i rising, and she'll tell you all about that. It's not the same for every island. It's place specific. In the past, we've had some really wonderful people speaking. Dr. Margaret Mutu from Aotearoa, Dr. Tevita Kaili, who actually is a dean of humanities at BYU, brilliant guy. I learned so much from him. And then also we've had Tua Pittman, who's a pole navigator. He comes to the Cook Islands and he talks to us about things that are similar in Cook Islands, what they call Kuki Airani. They don't want to use the word Captain Cook, right? So it's Kuki Airani and how they have their creation stories, etc. If you're interested in this stuff like I am, you can see all of them. You can go to our Branch Chair website that you see right there at the top here. And you can see all the things we've done in June, July, August, September, October, and then coming up will be Kalei tonight. Next week, we'll have the Marquesans idea about stars with Edgar Titahi Otupa, who's a really brilliant guy. Following that, we're gonna do a special thing with Papa Hefara, whose name is Yves Dudut, his French name, about Makali'i rising. And then following that, we're gonna do a special tribute to Jean-Claude Teri'i Otirai, who is a famous Tahitian anthropologist and expert on Tahitian stars. He wrote a book on it. And then we're gonna come back to Hawaii with Pua Lincoln, and she's gonna talk to us about navigational stars. So that's kind of what we do. Also, I wanna plug my new course. Next semester on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10:30, I am teaching a course called Hawaiian Studies 490. It's Atua, Ancestors, Stars, and Temples, and we're gonna watch these videos we've made, and then we're gonna discuss them in class and see what students would like to do more in their research, expand their idea of what ancestral knowledge is. It would be really great for kumu hula and for people who study hula to come, because they'll know a lot of the names that we see. For instance, if you study the Kumulipo, Ki'i's the first man in Hawaii, and guess what? He's the first man in Tahiti too. And I think so in Aotearoa. We're gonna find that out. So we'll take a break in December for Christmas. We'll come back January 20th and we'll focus on temples like the one I showed you. But check out this temple in the corner. This is a temple from Tahiti that Captain Cook drew when he went there. And it's in Papara, the Papa Oktera, the place of the sun. And it measures when the sun is in winter solstice. Well, there's summer solstice actually. Yeah, that's what this one is for. So we'll talk about the heiau or the marae or the temples as an app, and how we can use our bodies as an app in the same way. So, mahalo nui loa. I'm gonna stop sharing, okay, Punihi?
Okay, thank you. Mahalo for that presentation. I think for some people, that was probably a lot of new, amazing information, thinking about the sun and how it moves. My brain doesn't particularly work like that. So, for example, this weekend we were helping my daughter, Lady Kalau's granddaughter, with a project she was working on, and I was like, okay, let me see if I understand one more time. I'm going to repeat it back to you, Mom. Is this what you're trying to say about the sun's movement? So it takes me a little while. So, you know, I'm a hula dancer as opposed to a navigator. I leave that to other people. But I think, you know, and for some, I think this might be what's exciting to me. You can go ahead and stop sharing your screen if you want.
Well, you know, I wonder if there's any questions and people want to see anything from any of us.
Okay.
Yeah. Any
So
questions?
we don't have questions yet in the Q&A box. I think people are probably trying to digest, but go ahead and anyone watching, if you have a question, you can put in the Q&A. That would be super helpful. So we can leave it up if you'd like to. You know, I will start with some questions. I know it's a lot. Like I said, I'm a processor. So if anyone's watching who's like me, it's like, okay, wait, I gotta make sure I process correctly to ask a good question. There's no good or bad question. So don't judge your question. Just ask it while you have Lili Kala here at your fingertips. I think one thing so I was, you know, we're talking about the movement of the sun and how that's, you know, really important for navigation, but also for weather. And I was wondering if you might expand a little bit to talk about how folks from all over Polynesia that you've had contact with, how they're talking about the importance of the sun. Are there other things that they are saying? So for example, my hula sister and I were just, and not only the sun, but the stars, right, that rise in different parts of time. We were talking about how she was sharing about at a certain time during the rise of Makali'i, where girls who were transitioning to womanhood would come together and do a special ceremony. So all the girls who transitioned during that year would come together during the rise of Makali'i to do this important ceremony, which I had never heard before. And so I'm curious if you might share about some of the things that you're learning from across Polynesia about, you know, how people are using the stars to mark time, or the sun, you know, which is another star, to mark time in kind of specific ways that folks might be interested in. I know for me, that's exciting to me. Like, oh, this is when we do the ceremony, right? Like those are things that, how can I use this today? Oh, this is the time. And then why is this the time, you know, as we learn. So I'm just curious if there's any kind of things that are top of mind for you that you remember from that series thus far, that's really exciting and different, that kind of adds to our bucket of knowledge, if you will.
The first thing that we actually made this Atua series into 3 different parts. And later on, we're going to look at Lapa'au and visual arts, and we'll probably get around to doing work on climate change and what we do as Polynesians living on small islands to handle that. But for this one, we wanted to start with the wisdom of the ancestors. I mean, that's why Polynesian ancestral knowledge, right? We want to start with that. Acknowledging that we are cousins throughout this Polynesian triangle. And the Tahitians like to look at it as a big he'e, a big octopus. They, of course, at Raiatea are in the middle. And that Raiatea, middle of the octopus, used to be called Hawaii. And then there's this northern path. If you go straight north from Bora Bora, which is right next to Raiatea, you're going to hit Kauai. So these are all sailing directions as well. How do we understand what the ancestors knew? So what are the ancestors for Hawaii? Well, we have Earth Mother, sometimes Papa, sometimes Haumea. She's the same woman, actually, 2 different names. And I'm talked about her here in this particular time when I was talking about female Akua knowledge. That idea of Earth Mother, Sky Father, the Earth in conjunction with stars, that's a Hawaiian thing. And it's talked about in a very similar way in Aotearoa. And when you go to Tahiti or Raiatea, or you go to Tonga or Samoa, they don't talk about that. They talk about Kanaloa, that the earth begins by Kanaloa, which is the ocean in most places. He's also a creator Akua. In Tahiti, there's a new movement in the Christian churches to call Jehovah Ta'aroa or Tangaloa, as they would say, because That's their ancient ancestor who made them. So I love this kind of stuff. That's why I'm gonna teach about it. And we're gonna talk about it. And then I found out, oh, yes, in the Austral Island, no, in the Tuamotus rather, they have Earth Mother and Sky Father there too. So they don't necessarily agree with the Tahiti people. Tuamotus are some islands halfway between Tahiti and the Marquesas. So, and in the Marquesas, they have Earth Mother and Sky Father. So what's his Kanaloa business? What's his ocean? He's the He'e, by the way. He's that big octopus in on the earth. So we'll have some different ideas. I don't expect it to be all the same. But when we look at stars, remember I showed you Orion, which is called Wakea. He's here in our little chart here. He has, in the Kumolipo, he has a younger brother named Lihaula, which is another name for Lehua Kona or Antares in Scorpio. So that constellation Scorpio is the younger brother of Orion. And then the next younger brother after that is Makali'i or the Pleiades. Those three things we saw at the temple. Those three markers for the solstice and the equinoxes are part of the family story in Hawaii. We descend from them. The Maui clan in our stories come from those stars. We come from them. I'm a descendant of Maui. I come from them. My grandchildren are there. So you see how that connection is with who we are today? And temples are basically the app that you use to measure stars. So it's an old app. It took a lot more work than just using your hand, But we can use those stars to traverse the ocean from the Northern Pacific to the Southern Pacific. We can go around the world, as Nainoa has shown us. We can go around the world using this kind of navigation. And I just think that's really a lot of fun. So why do we go there? Because it's not usually taught at university. And in fact, there is no university in all of the world that focuses only on Polynesia. And what I'd like to do with these webinars is to get enough interest that we have actually a part of Hawaii Nui Akea being a focus on Hawaii and Polynesia. They're different. The stars are called different names. In Tahiti, Orion's called Mere Mere. In Hawaii, it's called Wakea. Why is that? We don't know, but we still can figure this out because a lot of old people with those stories are around to still tell us. And that's what we do. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. In a lot of ways. A couple of things I'm thinking about when I'm listening to you, Mom. We are very different people, and for whoever's watching, may or may not know that. You're my mom, I'm your daughter, and yet, very similar, but also very different. I've always, explained to people, oh, my mom kind of is walking with the ancestors. Like she and you'll try that, right? We'll be driving down through Honolulu and you literally will say, like, oh, it's a good thing I'm not driving because I don't really see the lights in the streets. I see the heiau and I see the fish ponds and the people that were right here doing this and this and this. And I go, oh, okay. And that's interesting to me. And what is more interesting to me personally, what I am called to is thinking about how, ancestral concepts, ancestral knowledge can help us maybe heal in a lot of ways today, right? And I think I spend a lot of time, I know I share with you, I spend a lot of time thinking about how all people, not just Hawaiians, right, but all people might be able to glean lessons from Native Hawaiian knowledge if we're in Hawaii, or if we're in Tahiti, how you can learn from Tahitian knowledge or wherever, to help all of us become to talk about that aloha that you talked about earlier, right? That we can
we all have ancestors.
Absolutely.
And the temple that we see from Tahiti right there is actually a temple that measures one wall 0 degrees north.
Mm-hmm.
And you measure it with a compass. They didn't have a compass, but they made 0 degree. We can talk about that later. But that's also found in South America at Machu Picchu, the altar of the sun. It's in Mexico City with the temple of the sun and the temple of the moon, 0 degree north. Angkor Wat is 0 degrees north. The pyramids are 0 degrees north. They were studying the sun movement through the sky. They're studying the stars. They all know about Orion and the 3 stars in the belt of Orion. You know, we 3 kings of Orient are, that's who that is. In fact, Notre Dame is 0 north. So it comes into the Christian churches as well. And that's ancient knowledge. And what I love is that we think we know a lot today, but boy, they knew a lot before. So I just like to investigate that. And
Well,
I think it's fun.
And I think, you know, a point that Auntie Pua, Dr. Pua Kanahele makes is that you have taught and that, you know, many people have used is to think about how, to your point, what our ancestors knew and how that's inside of us. That's part of our blood memory. That's part of our ancestral DNA that maybe we have not woke up to yet, but is there, and how when we are sharing stories that might help a part of our, you know, ancestral DNA to wake up, and you know what that can help teach us. I think that's, for me, that's exciting because it reminds us of our potential, right? That perhaps, not perhaps, for sure, we have not woken to all of our potential yet, right? That there is so much in us from all of our kupuna that we have the potential to bring forth in one way or another. And when we make these connections between people and stories and experiences, that can wake up our own potential. But another thing that you remind me of as you're telling stories, Mom, about just this series alone and how you are sharing stories of, hey, we get different stories about the beginning of time or who the first wahine and the first kane were. And that's okay, right? I know that's kind of natural, perhaps in your house of knowledge, but I think that there's such a powerful message there as we think about where we are in the world today in 2020 on November 4th, after a very interesting night for many of us, and you know, and that in so many places in Hawaii, but also across the world, it's not okay to have different stories or different ideas about the world. And so what I get excited about thinking is that in the modeling that you folks are doing is that it's okay to have more than one story, right? We know this, right? But it's we're not trying to change the Aotearoa story or the Rapa Nui story or the whoever story to match our story. That those stories actually make it more interesting, right? And that's one of the points that I'm gleaning from your sharing today is that, and when we put all those stories together, not to compete against one another, but to bring them together to say, hey, I wonder what we can learn about the world from that perspective. Like, what do we gain from learning your story plus our story, right? Which I think is a very beautiful and natural thing in some spaces in our world, and very, very different. And that kind of modeling, I think, can really go a long way. So I just wanted to share that's what I'm thinking about, and that different people who look different, who sound a little bit different, right? You know, whether we're speaking our own languages or our colonizers' language, you know, we don't have to be exactly the same in order for us to connect and in order for us to be in relationship. And, you know, kind of what I've seen you do over the last several months in this is you're blossoming these relationships in real time between you and the speaker, but also between you and folks, you know, all over the world who are watching the webinar, and then between each other. And that point you made earlier about the way they're excited and being in conversation, I really want to celebrate that as well, because although that might be natural in one setting, I think can teach a lot of people some really valuable lessons about how we can be with one another in the world that I think we probably need more than ever at this point. So I want to just kind of celebrate that piece as well. And with that said, we have 1 minute left. And so I'm going to turn over to you. Is there anything that you would like to leave for our audience today as we go off into the rest of our day?
I want to say to you, Punihe, that I'm most delighted by all of our conversations, because you do have a different point of view and a different idea and a different lens by which you look at the world. And I always learn from you. So I always tell everybody, you know, my kids are smarter than I am. So I'm really lucky. I don't have to worry about anything from now on. They got it down. I also want to thank President Lassner, and I want to thank Provost Bruno for always supporting the Polynesian Ancestral Knowledge Series and sending out to all the campuses and what's going on here with our little webinars. I want to thank Auntie Gladys Brandt, who made this possible by giving donation to the UH Foundation. So we use that money in order to pay honorariums to these people, or And it's much cheaper having them in a webinar than bringing them to Honolulu and putting them up in a fancy hotel. So we have been able to explore this, and it was her idea, Auntie Gladys's idea, who was my high school principal and who made me weep copiously on many occasions when I was being insubordinate. It was Auntie Gladys Brandt's idea to have comparative Polynesian studies. She's brilliant. So I always like to honor that.
Yeah.
Do you know we're Haumea, the Earth Mother? She's reborn in every generation of Hawaiian woman. I am Haumea, you are Haumea, Haena is Haumea. And when the boys get, wow, how come the girls get this? I say, oh, no, don't forget, Wakea and Kane, they're born in you. So, Lamaku is named for both Kane and Wakea, right? Those names come down, the DNA is in us, the DNA comes down. And guys, if you're not Hawaiian who are watching the show, you all have ancestors and they have something to teach you. So before you go to sleep tonight, just pray to one of your ancestors who's passed on to the other world and ask them to give you answers that you need. You got a problem? Ask them, they'll tell you. In the morning, you'll wake up with the answer. I promise. That's what we do.
Yeah, mahalo nui. That's a great way to end, especially during this time of year when many believe that time to be in communication with your kupuna is really ripe and so however you want to communicate in that way is really important too. Thank you, Professor Lilikala Kume'elehiwa, for being with us today. Thank you to all of our attendees. Again, mahalo to Hawaii Papua Kiao and Auntie Gladys Brandt for making this possible, and in particular this particular webinar. So mahalo to everyone. We'll see you again on November 25th, same time, same place, talking about the Malama project here at UH Manoa. Mahalo, everybody. Have a great afternoon. Please stay safe. Aloha.
And come join us tonight at 7. Aloha.
Aloha.